10 years after the federal police tipped off Indonesia about the Bali Nine and 5 days after 2 of the group were executed, the AFP has given a lengthy and detailed explanation as to why it acted like it did. And the feds are unapologetic, saying it was an operationally sound decision for which they will not apologise. The AFP also says it's impossible to guarantee it wouldn't make a similar decision in the future. Not everyone's happy with the AFP's explanation, especially the lawyers and friends of some of the Bali Nine, as Dylan Welch reports.
It's too late for Andrew Chan and Mayuran Sukumaran. But today, the federal police finally explained the part they played in the arrests of the Bali Nine.
Many in the Australian community are angry with the AFP for our perceived role in 2005 that led to the executions last week. I understand that.
How did you know what you were doing?
For 10 years, a cloud has hung over the AFP decision to tell police in Indonesia, where drug charges often attract the death penalty, about the role of 9 young Australians in a heroin syndicate.
We were not in a position to arrest any members of the Bali Nine prior to their departure from Australia. It's for these reasons, at the time, that the AFP made the decision to consult and engage our Indonesian partners and ask for their assistance. It was operationally appropriate, and it was consistent with the guidelines as they existed then. And the AFP, like many of our partners in government...
Barrister Bob Myers is a family friend of Bali Nine member Scott Rush. In April 2005, he asked the AFP to stop Rush from travelling to Indonesia. He watched this morning's press conference with a growing sense of frustration.
They were pulling the strings. Don't let them say that it was really out of our hands. They dictated the plot.
When you're dealing with a sovereign nation from another sovereign nation, that once you hand over information and request things, it really is in their hands.
Bob Myers has always argued the AFP could have arrested the couriers when they returned to Australia, rather than informing Indonesian police. The AFP insists that would have failed to break up the syndicate.
At that particular time, we didn't know anything about how much drugs would come in, etc. To let them come back through to Australia, we may have had no evidence when they come back. We may have very well grabbed a couple of mules that come back, but we would not have been able to have any evidence in relation to the wider syndicate.
Instead, they provided letters to Indonesian authorities outlining the plot.
I've seen the letters, everybody's seen the letters. It says the potential importation of heroin. It names the drug from Indonesia into Australia, and it had 8 of the 9 were identified. Certainly Scott Rush was identified, Michael Shugai and various others. I say they had sufficient evidence to arrest them, but so what if they didn't? So what if they arrested them and it was a failed prosecution? Chan and Sukumaran would be alive today, and the other 7 wouldn't have been incarcerated for the past 7 years.
The AFP also attacked media coverage of their handling of the Bali Nine case.
I also have an obligation to the men and women of the AFP to ensure that their welfare is well taken care of, and public references to blood on our hands, public references to a cavalier approach, public references to shopping the Bali Nine in exchange for some conspiracy of a greater relationship, cartoons depicting the AFP as the firing squad, cartoons depicting the AFP as the Grim Reaper, are not only misinformed and ill-guided, they are, in my view, in very bad taste.
Michael Phelan was the senior officer who approved tipping off the Indonesians. It was a decision that affected even his officers.
I can remember at least one occasion at the time where a request was made for one of the investigators in Brisbane to come off the team, because as a result of the passing of information, was not comfortable with us dealing with the death penalty situation.
Say to Commissioner Colwyn, you can't do it, old son. We are Australians, you're the AFP, you're our public servants. You've got an obligation to prevent the commission of crime, so arrest them before they go, even if your prosecution fails. And you also have an obligation not to expose Australian citizens to the death penalty.
The AFP insists it was protecting Australians. They acted as they did to target the terrible impact of narcotics in Australia.
In 2007 and 2011 alone, there were 4,100 reported deaths from heroin and other opiates alone. Now that doesn't include other illicit goods. That's heroin and other opiates alone, 4,100 deaths.
Rob Buckingham and his wife Christy visited Chan and Sukumaran right up until their last moments.
To a certain extent, I suppose I feel a little numb. We had hoped against hope right through that the Indonesian authorities would see the wisdom of allowing both Mayu and Andrew to live. They were reformed. They were doing an amazing job inside Korobakana, reforming other prisoners. And so it was a simple request we felt that we and many others were making to the Indonesian authorities. Recognise what you have in these two young men. Recognise that you've got a massive drug problem and that these two young guys are helping actually reform drug addicts and drug traffickers. Why not allow them to live in prison in Indonesia, serve out their sentence, but why take them out and execute them?
You mentioned at the beginning that the families were in your thoughts. Do you think the AFP owes them an apology?
No, I don't believe we owe them an apology. It's a very difficult question. I mean, we can't apologise for the role that we have to try and stop illicit drugs from coming to this community.
The death penalty doesn't just punish the guilty, it also punishes the innocent. And so we have family members right now that will live the rest of their life with the sadness of what has taken place. So I think just out of compassion and kindness, it would be wonderful for the AFP to recognise that and to give the families an apology.
Dylan Welch reporting.